Steve Jobs' morning routine wasn't about productivity hacks or 5 a.m. alarms. Every day he asked himself one brutal question. If today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do? How would your life change if you started doing the same? Tonight, let's break down the mindset shift that kept Jobs hungry and how you can use it. What if your biggest mistake was focusing too much on technology and not enough on people? Steve Jobs faced this exact problem early in his career. He learned through painful experience that innovation should start with the customer, not the technology. At first, he prioritized making advanced computers over understanding what people actually needed. This approach led to products like the Apple Lisa, a technical marvel that failed in the marketplace because it was too expensive and complex for most users. The turning point came when Jobs realized technology alone wasn't enough. After being forced out of Apple and starting Next, he saw how focusing on user experience could change everything. When he returned to Apple in 1997, he applied this lesson immediately. The result was the iMac, a computer designed around what ordinary people wanted: simple setup, attractive design, and internet access right out of the box. It wasn't the most powerful machine available, but it solved real problems for users. Jobs called these hard-won lessons scar tissue. Each failure left marks that shaped his future decisions. The key insight was to always start by asking what benefit a product would provide, not what features it could contain. This approach led to groundbreaking successes like the iPod, which solved the problem of carrying your music collection in your pocket, and the iPhone, which redefined how we interact with technology. You can apply this same principle to your own projects. Before jumping into solutions, ask what incredible benefit you're offering. If you're working on a product, service, or even a personal goal, think about who will use it and what problems it solves for them. The most successful innovations don't come from better technology alone. They come from better understanding of human needs. This shift in perspective didn't just save Apple. It became the foundation for everything Jobs did. He proved that when you put people first, technology follows. The products that changed our world weren't created in a lab. They were designed by starting with simple questions about what would make someone's life better. That's how you make a dent in the universe. The lesson goes beyond business. Whether you're planning a career move or a creative project, the same rule applies. Look at the situation through the user's eyes first. What would make their experience remarkable? When you solve that, the rest becomes much clearer. Jobs showed us that the distance between a good idea and a world-changing one often comes down to this single question. Who are you really doing this for? Your answer will shape everything that follows. What if settling for good enough at work is the real failure? Steve Jobs had a clear philosophy about work. You've got to find what you love. And that is as true for your work as it is for your lovers. He didn't just say this, he lived it. Most people accept jobs they tolerate, counting down hours until weekends. Jobs refused this mindset entirely. His career shows what happens when you reject compromise and pursue work that genuinely excites you. After being fired from Apple in 1985, Jobs could have taken an easier path. Instead, he started 2 new companies simultaneously, Next in computers and Pixar in animation. These weren't safe choices. The personal computer market was crowded and computer-animated films didn't exist yet, but Jobs chose them because they engaged his passions. He poured himself into both ventures, working relentlessly, even though success wasn't guaranteed. This period proved his commitment to doing meaningful work mattered more than security or convenience. The Pixar story shows how far this principle can take you. Jobs invested heavily in the unproven field of computer animation when most Hollywood executives dismissed the idea. He supported artists pushing technical boundaries, resulting in Toy Story, the first full-length computer-animated film. What seemed like a niche experiment became a revolution because Jobs believed in its potential. He worked through years of technical hurdles and financial struggles because he loved the creative challenge. Jobs gave direct advice about finding fulfilling work. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. He saw settling as worse than failing because it meant giving up the search for work that matters. This wasn't abstract advice. He described being fired from Apple as awful tasting medicine, but I guess the patient needed it. The setback forced him to rediscover creative work he truly cared about. Without that difficult transition, Pixar might never have existed. How do you know when you found work worth doing? Jobs said simply, "You'll know when you find it." He recognized it gets better over time, not through instant gratification. At Pixar, progress came slowly through tedious technical problems interspersed with creative breakthroughs. Jobs persisted because each small step forward reinforced his conviction in the project. But passion alone doesn't guarantee success. Jobs combined his love for creation with relentless resilience. When Pixar struggled financially, he mortgaged his house to keep funding it. When Next computers weren't selling, he shifted focus to software licensing. His ability to adapt while staying true to his vision proved crucial. This combination, passion plus persistence, separates those who dream from those who actually change things. What makes work worth doing differs for everyone. The key lies in honestly assessing whether your current path excites you enough to overcome inevitable obstacles. Jobs showed that when you find work aligned with your deepest interests, effort feels meaningful rather than exhausting. The question isn't whether your job is prestigious or profitable. It's whether it gives you a reason to jump out of bed every morning, truly eager to begin again. What if dropping out of college was your best decision? Steve Jobs made that choice after 6 months at Reed College. He felt the coursework wasn't worth his parents' financial sacrifice, but instead of leaving education entirely, he stayed on campus auditing classes for 18 months. This unconventional path gave him freedom to explore subjects purely out of curiosity, without worrying about grades or requirements. One choice changed everything: attending a calligraphy class. He learned about typeface design, letter spacing, and the artistry behind printed words. At the time, this knowledge seemed completely unrelated to computers. There was no practical reason to study fonts, but a decade later, when designing the first Macintosh, Jobs incorporated everything he'd learned. The Mac became the first computer with beautiful typography, setting it apart from competitors. Windows later copied these same design elements. Jobs reflected on this experience years later. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. He couldn't have predicted how calligraphy would influence technology. The value only became clear in retrospect. This explains why he trusted his instincts when taking risks others avoided. When something interested him, he pursued it without demanding immediate usefulness. Many ambitious people try to calculate every career move in advance, but Jobs showed the power of following curiosity even when the payoff isn't obvious. What seems irrelevant today might become crucial later. The calligraphy class didn't just influence computer fonts, it shaped Apple's entire design philosophy. You likely have experiences that don't fit neatly into your career plan. Maybe you enjoy woodworking, study obscure history, or tinker with old cameras. These hobbies might feel separate from your professional goals, but under Jobs' philosophy, that's exactly why they matter. Diverse knowledge creates unique connections others won't see. The hobby you consider irrelevant today might solve tomorrow's toughest problem in an unexpected way. This applies beyond technical skills. Jobs' interest in Zen Buddhism influenced Apple's minimalist design. His study of electronics as a teenager helped when founding Apple. Even being fired from the company he started gave him perspective that later saved Apple from collapse. He wouldn't have predicted these connections in advance. Trusting this process means tolerating uncertainty. When Jobs took the calligraphy class, personal computers didn't exist yet. He couldn't know fonts would matter. The dots only connected years later. This is why exploring varied interests matters more than checking predictable career boxes. The most valuable connections often come from unlikely places. What skill or interest do you have that seems unrelated to your goals? Don't dismiss it. Like Jobs' calligraphy class, it might become your secret weapon when you least expect. The challenge isn't planning every step perfectly forward. It's recognizing connections only visible in hindsight. This mindset carries beyond careers. Jobs applied the same thinking to mortality. Just as you can't predict how experiences connect, you can't control when they'll end. That uncertainty became motivation rather than fear. The dots connect backwards, but they shape everything moving forward. What appears random today might define your legacy tomorrow. What if remembering death is the ultimate motivation hack? Steve Jobs turned this unsettling idea into his most powerful tool. While most people avoid thinking about mortality, Jobs confronted it daily. Every morning, he asked himself one question. If today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? This simple practice didn't depress him, it clarified everything. For Jobs, this question wasn't hypothetical. At 17, he read a quote about living each day as if it were your last. For decades, that idea shaped his decisions. When he faced pancreatic cancer in 2005, the practice became even more real. Most motivational strategies focus on goals or rewards. Jobs' approach was different. It removed distractions by confronting life's finite nature. The results were practical. Jobs said when the answer was no too many days in a row, he knew he needed change. This simple filter helped him leave comfortable situations and take risks others avoided. After getting fired from Apple, this mindset pushed him to start Next and invest in Pixar when both seemed like long shots. Conventional wisdom says play it safe. Jobs' mortality check said otherwise. This practice goes deeper than productivity. Jobs saw death as life's best invention. He believed it clears out the old to make way for the new. While most people fear this inevitability, he used it. Remembering he would die gave him permission to ignore others' expectations, drop what didn't matter, and focus entirely on what did. You can see this principle in Apple's biggest risks. Introducing the iPhone meant cannibalizing iPod sales. Developing the iPad required ignoring skeptics who said tablets would fail. Jobs moved forward because he asked himself what really mattered, not what seemed safest. The same thinking applied to personal choices. Would launching a startup feel worthwhile on your last day? Would staying in an unfulfilling job? Try this for 1 week. Ask Jobs' question each morning. Notice how it clarifies decisions that normally feel complicated. Meetings you'd skip, projects you'd start, conversations you'd have. The answers become obvious when viewed through this lens. The practice works because it bypasses fear and pride, showing what you truly value. Jobs didn't use mortality as morbid fixation. He used it as a focusing tool. There's a reason "Stay hungry" was his motto. Recognizing time is limited creates urgency to act. Most people operate as if they have unlimited tomorrows. Jobs knew better. His daily question forced him to stop postponing what mattered. This mindset frees you to make unpopular choices. Jobs could ignore market research because he followed passion instead. He could bet everything on unproven ideas because failure didn't scare him. The threat of regret weighed more than the fear of losing. When time seems abundant, it's easy to delay hard decisions. Remembering it isn't changes everything. The final insight isn't about death. It's about clarity. Jobs showed that confronting mortality removes distractions, revealing what deserves your limited time. His morning question worked because time is the one resource everyone wastes until they realize they're running out. You don't need dramatic life changes to start, just the willingness to ask one honest question when you wake up tomorrow. Steve Jobs showed us that groundbreaking products alone don't define a legacy. It's the principles behind them. His real gift was proving that passion, perseverance, and putting people first can literally change the world. Tonight, try his daily question: if today were my last, would I do this? Let your honest answers guide you toward work that matters. The search might take time. Jobs kept looking until he found what ignited him. As he famously said, "Stay hungry, stay foolish." Your seemingly random experiences are already connecting behind the scenes. You'll understand how when looking back.